Hey everyone, you're listening to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about how to avoid raising entitled kids. Some of the areas we cover are gratitude and appreciation, encouraging financial and personal responsibility, and ways to have your child learn to struggle while they still live at home. Let's get started. Hey guys, good to see you again today.
Hey, great to see you.
So glad we can all be together again. Mindy, you've had a lot of exciting things going on.
At the beginning of the year, we all talked about things we wanted to do this year. One of the things on the top of my list was skydiving.
Ooh.
And well, my husband listens to our podcast and he arranged for me alone. He didn't want to do it.
Uh-huh.
We went to iFly, and it's an indoor skydiving place
Cool.
here outside of Philadelphia. And so I got to experience an indoor skydiving adventure, and it was really cool.
That is really neat. How long are you floating or whatever?
You're actually only essentially flying. They say it's almost like skydiving from 12,000 feet. Or is it 20,000 feet? I can't remember.
Uh-huh.
But you're in there like maybe a minute. So
Okay.
but I mean, the whole time, it's amazing what a workout it is. Like I had
Really?
no
Start off
idea.
at the bottom, or is it like you've jumped out of something?
Okay, so I wish we could have jumped out of something. But no, it's funny. People have a couple of reactions when you're sitting there watching other people do it. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to do that. And Bryce is like, I would never do that.
Uh-huh.
But basically, all you do is there's this wind tunnel and you're watching everybody else do it. They take a lot of time to teach you and train you, like how to hold your body, things to do. You have this protective gear on. So I'll have to show you guys pictures. And Bryce took good
Yes.
video of it. But basically, the wind is already blowing because they get your weight when you walk in. So they know like how much
Oh,
forced to blow.
interesting.
So then like you go into this inner sanctum. You're standing in this doorway and the instructor's already inside. And so you're supposed to like put your hands up and just fall forward. It's almost like a trust
Ah.
fall.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then you just like float.
Float up.
Wow, that's really
Yeah,
cool.
I was so thankful that Bryce did that, and he knew that I just would love it, and I appreciated it so much. I had such a blast.
Oh, that's
That's
great.
awesome.
That's really good. And then you had a really exciting day yesterday too.
Oh goodness. I had a friend that just happened to go to New York City for the week with her husband, and I just got to drive up and meet her. So it was my first time going into the city by myself.
That's a big deal.
So that was a very big deal, but it worked out great. We had so much fun. Just
That restaurant looked fun with all the singing.
Ellen's Stardust Diner, and so many people have told me to go there.
I've never even heard of that.
I mean, you're not really going there for the food, though I had a bowl of chili. It was good.
Mhm.
It was really hearty and good. But you're just so fascinated by these singers and performers, and they make it fun. Like they would change certain, song lyrics to songs you would know to make it funny. But it was so enjoyable.
Well, that's so exciting. That
I'm
is awesome.
Yes.
That is
How about you
great.
guys?
Oh, I've got nothing.
Oh,
Well,
Life
Julie's
is mundane here.
Julie's
Oh,
deep in the
gosh.
midst of finishing up her renovation.
yeah. How's that going?
We probably have another week and a half.
Yeah, that sounds
But
great.
Yeah. So.
I look forward
Always
to posting some pictures of that. I think listeners are going to want to know. Maybe like a before and after or something
I
like
Yeah.
know.
that.
I want to know.
You've been working
Yeah.
on a renovation now since almost the beginning of January.
Yeah, like the second week of January.
Yeah.
How long was it supposed to take originally?
They're on track. They said
Okay.
6 to 8, and we're about
Good.
8. So, yeah.
That's
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know what I have going on except the fact that spring sports have started. So if any mom out there has any kids that don't drive yet and they're involved in spring sports, you know what that means. Practice every night, games, driving around, all that fun stuff. But we did have a beautiful day yesterday, like 67 degrees here. So at least when we're sitting out there watching, it's not too cold. Although I think it's going to get like 33 here next week. So that'll be a time when I might watch from the car.
I think it might snow on Sunday.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, our topic today is something that again, like average kids, we kind of thought, who should we talk about this? And the same thing with this one. Today, we're talking about entitled kids. And I guess we just don't shy away from the hard topics on Midlife Matters.
Yes.
But I know that no one sets out or wants to raise an entitled child. And I looked up entitlement because it can mean a lot of different things, but the actual definition is the belief that one is inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. So I think that that is what we kind of seek to avoid. And definitely if we hear our kids described with that adjective in front of their name or just entitled kids, we all cringe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really hard to keep that attitude at bay, especially as your kids become teenagers, because the whole nature of teenagerhood is that the world revolves around me. I just thought this would be a great chance for us to kind of talk about how we've addressed that in our own homes. What do you guys think about when you think about entitled kids? Like, what does it look like to you?
You're right. It does make you cringe as a parent.
Uh-huh.
This is an area I didn't want my child to be average in or the norm. I wanted them to be my goal was to be polar opposites of the culture, because it's just not very attractive. Like you said, Marie, I think it means deserving something just because of who they are, not necessarily that they've earned it or I think they feel like they have a right to things that used to be wants or privileges.
Right.
These are people who really haven't been told no very often. They're used to getting what they want. And I asked my daughter about this, and she had a really different perspective that I liked. She said that it's important to recognize that you have privilege. Like, we can't help our privilege sometimes, that we grew up in America, or that we're white, or that we're a certain socioeconomic class. Like, we are born into that, and sometimes we can't help that. But it's just important to recognize that. Like, you're entitled if you think everybody gets to go to college or everybody gets a car when they're 16. Now, our kids did get those things, but I think they didn't think that everybody else gets those things. They realized that they did have more than a lot of kids, but it wasn't because they deserved it or
Right.
were privileged in some way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah. What were you thinking about that, Mindy?
It does. That was something just like Julie that, it depends on your background too. It depends on your families that you came from and their goals for you and what you've seen in your lifespan. Like Bryce and I being raised in a military families, we've been a lot of different places and we've seen a lot of different things. Sometimes it's as simple as a really excellent school system, and I remember living in Nashville and it felt a little like a bubble. It was like everybody was beautiful, gorgeous, wealthy, educated, had great jobs. And I'd never lived any place that was quite like that before. Especially in Brentwood, even the middle class was just, everybody seemed to be thriving. We had come from Atlanta where there was this dichotomy between very wealthy and very poor. And you could easily drive through the neighborhoods, one neighborhood's over here, and then 2 blocks over, there's like these mini mansions. So depending on where you've been and what you've seen, our kids, even coming home and complaining about the school, that would make me cringe because I would think, you are so blessed to go to such a great school,
Right.
So yeah, I guess like Julie, it was something that we tried to be aware of, but as in everything else, sometimes you don't know that you're teaching it until it's shown to you through some behavior, and then you become aware of it. So, you don't know what you don't know, I guess.
Right. When I feel like my own kids are entitled, I was thinking about, I don't like it when I hear words like I need instead of can I or could I. Or I don't like it when I hear them say like I'm doing or going instead of can I or could I. And I don't like it when they assume things like when I get my car. Well, you may not get a car, or when we go here, or when I get that. And I know that they're just speaking from their own experience. It's logical that they would assume certain things, but I don't like it when they say it like there's just no other possibility than what they've just said. Right. And I'm not saying that my kids are unique in that, because I think all kids display those behaviors at times, but those are the times when I think, ooh, I need to be, honing in on this a little bit, addressing this, maybe pointing out some things.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. It always got me when my kids would say that a friend has gotten this, so like I should have that. But that they look around their world and they're like, well, my friends don't have to pay for their video games, or my friends were this. I'm like, anytime you start a sentence with my friends, it's not going to go well.
Right. And I do think that some of those things can also, I know that I've been in conflict with my own kids by virtue of the fact that I grew up in a very small town in an area that is economically depressed compared to like, a big city type area. Western New York is not the hotbed of the economy. So when you come to Nashville, the things that my kids take for granted are things that never even crossed my radar as being options.
Right.
So then it bothers me when they act blasé about that, like that's just a given. But you can't make people have your own experience.
Oh, right.
So, I can get sort of internally upset about that and sometimes verbally express, you don't know how good you have it, but they can't imagine my experience, just like I don't truly know what their experience is like. I don't truly know what it's like to go to their high school and feel like they're in competition with trying to keep up with all these other people. I don't know what that feels like either.
Right.
That kind of leads into, do you think that spoiling your child is different than creating a sense of entitlement? Like, I don't think they're really truly the same definition, but I think sometimes people use them interchangeably.
Well, as I thought about that, they are very different, but it does seem like it's a cause and effect to me. Like if you're spoiling your child in a sense that they never feel rejection, pain, discomfort, and they get the sense that the world revolves around them, then it creates that sense of entitlement.
What I think about in terms of like spoiling versus entitlement is like special treats or times like a vacation or like it's your birthday. I feel like it should be kind of fun to spoil. You're going to get special treatments, you're going to get gifts, whatever you want that day, that's going to be, or if this is, your special event for the vacation. I feel like those things are kind of like fun spoiling.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought, is that I kind of thought of it, spoiling and entitlement both have a negative connotation, but I thought spoiling can be good, kind of like the way a grandparent does it. Like we always wanted to give one-on-one time with each of our kids. Think of it as the gift of your presence with a C, not presents, like gifts. Sometimes I'll be out and I'll say, hey, I picked this up for you. I just thought you might like it. I don't routinely do that, but I think that's okay. Doing something nice for them when they're hurting, or say, hey, what's your favorite meal? I'm going to cook that. Or I don't know. I just don't think those things, when it's not material possessions, I think you can spoil your kids in a good way in other ways. And I think your kid. I don't know if entitlement is kind of rearing its ugly head, it's easier to say no.
Right.
But when you have a grateful kid, sometimes you just want to say yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. I was thinking about Christmas, and I think a lot of parents can relate to this. Like, I feel like the line between spoiling and entitlement at Christmas can move pretty quickly over to entitlement. Like it seems like maybe the list starts out pretty reasonable, things that they want or things that you're going to get. And then they start talking to their friends at school and, oh, so-and-so's getting this, or, comparing lists with other kids. And then pretty soon they're like, well, so-and-so is getting that. I can't believe that you only spend X number of dollars. I have to fit everything I want in X number of dollars, and you can quickly see that what they were willing to go along with before changes. And I do think that that's probably pretty normal, especially in the teenage years, but you do have to kind of address it.
Oh, yes. I thought the same thing. That was one of the things I thought about is just appropriate gifting because you want your child to feel loved and blessed. But I was thinking about Harry Potter in the first movie, and they show a picture of like Dudley's birthday. And Dudley is counting his presents. He's like, I got so many last year. So I need to have so many. I need to have one more this year. Right. And his parents are like, oh, but these gifts are more expensive. And he throws this tantrum, about how, no, I have to have more gifts than last year.
Oh, that kid is so cringy.
Oh, man, I want to wring his neck, and the parents too.
Yeah.
But that is a classic picture of entitlement and the parents leading him into that. Just appropriately gifting your child that they know that you're blessing them in an appropriate way.
Right. I don't know why, but at Christmas time, when they start getting entitled, my mind always goes back to the Little House on the Prairie books. And I think if they were happy getting their very own, their very own tin cup and a sugar cookie that their mother made. And I think they got like a penny in the bottom of their sock, and they described it as the best Christmas ever.
Oh,
yes. I mean,
it just doesn't work anymore.
I don't know if you find yourself dragging out all these examples of what Christmas could be like for you.
We've always treated Christmas and birthdays as kind of big gift giving time because we don't do a lot of that during the year. We'll say, put it on your birthday list, put it on the Christmas list. So I feel like it kind of balances out. You're either going to do it routinely or you're going to save it up.
I think the one common denominator here for all of us is just where are your eyes looking and where are our kids' eyes looking? Because it's hard for even us to stay content when we start looking around on social media, watching TV, seeing people's pictures on Instagram. It's really hard to stay content. Even if you were content before you started, maybe you're not so content after. I remember when I was pregnant with Jacob, I had insomnia. I had a hard time sleeping. And so my answer to that was to watch HGTV all night long. I was never more discontent in my life. I wanted to change this and change that and do this project and do that project. So it's with our kids too. I mean, they're really struggling with a lot of influences flooding their eyes, talking to kids, and they're developing their own sense of values and priorities along the way. So it's like we have to keep resetting them as we have to keep resetting ourselves. Okay, let's come back down. Let's hit our baseline again, and let's figure out where our foundation is. You are loved. I'm blessing you. I'm trying to bless you. I'm hoping that you feel it.
Yeah, it's a constant battle because the culture's never going to tell them the difference between a want and a need. They're never going to teach. It's never going to teach that. You have to instill that in them and talk about it and constant conversation.
You do. Contentment is not exciting in our culture, just to be content. We're always being sold something. Things are never good enough. You need to fix this. You need to get that. You need to buy this. You need
upgrade
to improve
this.
That. Yes. It's hard to then limit yourself and to be just content with the things that are in your life.
Yeah. When you do see a sense of entitlement, like how have you tried to prevent or weed that out?
Without yelling or slapping.
Well, we've all tried that, but that's probably not the best advice.
Well, I think it's really hard when you can give your kids things to have to choose not to. That is really hard because you just can't necessarily say, well, we can't afford that. Or because your kids might know that's not true. It's that we're choosing not to buy you that or for you to have this. So we've tried a lot of different things at different times. Like I said, I think you have to differentiate between a want and a need. That was always like, do you really need this? No, you just want it. Being consistent, which is the hardest thing of all. Right. And I think giving them some context is important because a lot of times in the bubble we live in, they don't even know that people have needs. They think everybody lives like we do. And so when they were young, I know sometimes our kids did room at the inn with my husband at our church. It's like a shelter for homeless. Stone Soup. I know, Marie, your family's done that, ministering to families with special needs, helping out at food banks or inner city community centers. We've done different things throughout, and our kids have all been on mission trips to third world countries.
Right.
And they've been to poor, impoverished areas right here in Tennessee. And I think those are eye-opening experiences to see that not only do people not have as much as we have, but a lot less,
Right.
they are needing the basics. And I think it just helps them appreciate what they have more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love all those ideas. Those are all things that help bring you back to a balance, to a humble thankfulness, for the life that you're given. Because unfortunately, sometimes our kids look at problems, and to them, the problem is, I don't have the newest iPhone.
Right.
That might be the biggest problem in their life, but that's because you've met all their needs, so they haven't had to go without. It's not that I'm going to starve them so that they can appreciate food. But at the same time, when I have had a child complain about dinner, it does immediately, make me angry. And so to try to teach them without the emotion of the anger, but to teach them, first of all, that's not kind to say that.
Yeah.
Second of all, this is a gift that you've been given. And I know that you have a mom that stays home most of the time and is cooking for you. And so you're not used to going without that, but it's not necessarily normal for a lot of people to have that.
I think our kids have a hard time, as I do, as anyone does, thinking or imagining other life scenarios because you're only living the one that you've been given.
Right.
I know, like when I've seen Sense of Entitlement, of course, a lot of times I do a lecture. Never really goes anywhere, but maybe they'll hear me in the back of their mind someday. Sometimes they have to do chores, maybe to earn it, earn some money around the house. I usually frequently like to assign scrubbing the grout in the showers as a way to earn money because I hate that job. And if you really, I know that you really want that item if you're willing to get on your hands and knees and scrub that grout.
Right.
That's a good indication of me whether it's truly important to you. They've had to get jobs when they turn 16, even if it's only 1 or 2 shifts a week, making them pay for certain things or a portion of it themselves. Sometimes I have a mental limit a lot of times on what I'm willing to spend on something. Like, even if I could afford it, I just don't want to spend more than X number of dollars on a pair of jeans. Or maybe I don't want to spend more than X dollars on this experience. But they really want it. And so I'll say, well, I'm willing to spend this much if you want to make up the difference. And that's another indication to me of whether they truly, truly want that. Or if it's just, I think I want that and I'm hoping my mom will just say yes. But if she didn't say yes, I'd be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something we've started with our kids, is when they're little, it's easy to say, I want this, I want that, when you're going to the store and they see it, they see an item. And so we start out with having an allowance for the kids, and it's pretty minimal. And they have to do certain chores around the house to actually earn the allowance. But then we also made a list, and Bryce was really smart in this. He made a full list of different jobs and how much we would pay for those extra jobs. Now, your normal stuff had to be done before you could go over and above and earn and do these other jobs. And so then we always told the kids, look, you have everything you need, but we're not going to necessarily supply your wants. In fact, if it's a want, you're pretty much going to have to pay for it. And that was even in the clothing department with Abby Ray. The boys don't really care about clothes, at least yet. And so for them, it was video game items. They had to have their own stake in the game, like you said. Maybe it's not that important. It's easy to ask for something, but when I actually have to sacrifice and work for it, do I still really want it? And then if I do, then I'm going to really value that thing. I'm going to take care of it when I get it.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, we did feel like chores were important. We felt like for the house to run, everybody had to pitch in.
Right.
And, when we were little, I had multiple chore charts that constantly got revised and relaminated. And
I love it.
And I always hated it. It was a chore to me to make it work. I hate
Right.
it. But we did it. And then as they got older, it did get a lot more relaxed. Like they still had things to do, but it just wasn't marking it off, paying you this money for it. It was more like, I'm going to ask you to do these things and I want you to say yes and I want you to do them.
Right.
And I think one of our listeners, Tiana, asked about this, like, how do you make teenagers do chores when they're busy and they're not home? And I just feel like it's not a strict structured thing at our house. It's just, I need you to run this errand. I need you to clean your bathroom. I need you to empty the dishwasher, or before the weekend, cut the grass. Or,
Right.
it's just a willingness to help when I need it, when I ask. And, maybe it might be like, well, before you leave tonight, get this done, that kind of thing. And that just worked really well for us.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just depends on your personality. Like, I can't keep up with a chore chart per se.
Oh, yeah.
I never could when they were little. All charts that I ever made, my kids joke, went out the window by the end of the week. Discipline charts, consequence charts. I couldn't even do potty training charts. Like, I'm just not a chart person. But I feel like if I ask you to do something, then you should do it, because it's not like I ask you to do it on a regular basis. I don't even have a chore that I need you to do on a regular basis. Just, I need help right now, so I want you to stop what you're doing and help, because there's a lot of the times where you're not having to do something.
Right.
Then if I hear no on that, I start thinking, well, these are pretty entitled kids.
Here comes the lecture.
Yeah.
Then you want to pile on the chores.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's sometimes our kids, like Julie mentioned earlier, that, honestly, the three of us do stay home. Could we do everything in the house? Sure, we could.
No.
Well, like, I'm thinking, the things that I ask the kids to do. So like my younger two, for example, my son, Jacob, his job every day is to clean out the dishwasher. He's actually an early riser, and it's something practical that helps me. I could clean out the dishwasher, but I really shouldn't be doing everything in the house for them. Everyone makes a mess. Everybody needs to help clean it up. My son, Nathan, is a 5th grader. He's able to, since we live in temporary housing, we actually have to take the trash to a dumpster, which is not too far from where we live. So Nathaniel, even on a snowy, icy day, will run out the door in a t-shirt and a pair of shorts to go take the trash. He takes the trash every single morning. It is different with Grant because he leaves so early. He's not an early riser. And I know that mornings are not his best time. So I don't ask Grant to do anything in the morning on a daily basis. He also no longer receives an allowance because he's 16 and able to work. He's at the point where it's kind of like Julie said, like, Grant, I need you to do this in the next couple of days, or before you go to bed tonight, you need to do this. And so a lot of times that happens on the weekends with a teenager when they're more home. And it might be more of a conversation. Okay, so you have this going then, you're working then. So look, you just need to figure out when you're going to go cut the grass, or when you're going to vacuum the entire upstairs, or whatever it is.
What are some practical ways that you can help kids to be grateful at different ages? I was thinking about this in terms of, like, even when you first start out with your little kids, I just remember teaching them please and thank you. I mean, I would always have my kids, do you want a cookie? Yes, please. And they weren't getting it until they said, yes, please. Or do you want that or not? No, thank you. I mean, they had to, and I can remember, you would say it and they would imitate it back, but then they would start to get ingrained in that and they would say it themselves. But what are some of the things that you guys have tried?
No, I always did have my kids write thank you notes for gifts that they received from family, even family and friends. I thought that was really important. Just modeling gratefulness to everyone, people outside your house that do things for you, take your groceries to your car, open the door for you, and especially in the house, your spouse. Because sometimes I think we don't treat them the same. And I did think mostly about when they were young for this question, because I think human beings in general learn really early on what kind of behaviors get them what they want. So if you're starting to see this in a 2 and 3-year-old, which you will,
Right.
Try to imagine that behavior, what it's going to look like on a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old. It's not pretty.
Right.
And I know I've talked about not projecting behaviors into their future, but if you don't do something about it, it's
Right.
not going to go away. Like, it's just human nature. So you're going to have to do something about it. And we've related entitlement a lot to material things, but I think there are other ways that you can teach a kid to be grateful and to not be so self-focused. And when our kids were little, we taught them how to entertain themselves. They all had room time from when they were very little up until, middle school. Every afternoon, they had to go into their room and just be alone and figure out what to do. Marie, you mentioned this with your self-care, like limiting their access to you. They can't just always, be asking you to do and asking of you. I think that's just teaching some self-control and to not taking the focus off themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's connected somehow to entitlement.
I think having to entertain yourself and find your own activities, it just gets you, first of all, more in touch with who you are. And second of all, it just develops a sense of, I don't need to have other people entertain me all the time, because that can even be kind of an entitlement. Like, what are you doing for me? Oh, well, now
Right.
You're not entertaining me well enough. You're not doing enough. Do more for me. Do more.
Right.
Right. Run me here. Take me here. Do that. Like there has to be a pause in that.
Yeah. Maybe say no sometimes. But there's some things that are like hot buttons in our house. And so one of those phrases that's a hot button is, that's not my job.
Mm.
And
do they say that, or do you?
Both.
That's a good perspective there, Marie. Oh, that's so funny. That's not my job. Yes, I think we both probably say that now that I'm thinking about that. I left my lunch at home. Sorry, not my problem. No, so one of the things that Bryce has seen in his job and in his career, there have been some really funny but really sad things that he's noticed. He teaches several college classes, and he's been teaching as a professor for quite a few years. And the sense of entitlement amongst college students is just amazing. But he has come home with several stories, kids plagiarizing, these young adults plagiarizing. Some of these are professionals already, and they're going back to school. And one of them actually had the nerve to say it was Bryce's fault. He gave them too much work, and they're trying to work during the day, and they just can't deal with all of this. So that's why they had to plagiarize. And we were like, are you kidding? Are you serious right now? Like, you've just given yourself an excuse to cheat in life because life got hard. There was another situation at work where a woman's father called Bryce and said that she was just, working real hard right now, and could he lower her responsibilities and just kind of go easier on her because she just really needed a break.
Oh,
and I
goodness.
was like, your dad is calling your boss at work. There's a problem. There's a big problem. And then that hot button has come out. Like, you don't say that's not my job. Bryce is an administrator at a hospital, and he picks up trash through the parking lot as he's walking into work. He could say that's not my job, but it is. He feels like it's everyone's job to take care of the facility, just like it's everyone's job to take care of the house. So if a child comes and says, you've asked them to do something, they say that's not my job. Guess what? A lecture's coming.
Right. I think that's one of those things too, where Julie was saying, oh, I think I need to pile a little bit more work on you.
Yes.
It's a good hot button to have to kind of teach your kids that, you're going to be asked to do some things that you don't think are your job, but they're really everybody's job.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we want to address, but sometimes is kind of hard to do. Do you think there are some ways that we can kind of set our kids up to struggle while they're in our home? And like Mindy said, this isn't like withholding food so they learn to starve, but what are some ways that they can have a little bit of struggle?
You try to make your kids, in quotes, struggle, essentially, even though you've got the safety net right there. I asked my older two children my daughter who's in college and I asked my son who is 16, I asked them the question, do you feel that there was anything that we did to keep you from feeling entitled?
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel unfair to you that you're paying towards your phone and car when your friends may not have to? And so that was part of the struggle, is just, the monetary aspect of it, because as they get older and they're earning their own money, how to set them up on a budget, have buy-in to their life, I guess. We really want functioning adults one day. We don't really want them living on our couch expecting,
Right.
handouts for the rest of their life. So Abby Ray's answer was, I definitely feel that you and Dad made sure I was preparing myself for the real world where my finances would not be taken care of by others. When I was younger, it felt unfair that I paid for my car, my phone. But now, even though it isn't super fun, she said, I feel better knowing that I'm better prepared for my future by having had to work on finances at a younger age and not being overwhelmed when I got on my own and it was all up to me. So I loved her answer. And then I really loved my son's answer. It's so funny because I texted him, and usually I get one word answer text back from Grant. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
He actually wrote me like this huge paragraph on this.
I'm
it was
interested
like
to hear it.
hot button for him. So I asked him the same question as I asked Abby Ray. And he said, okay, to answer your question, I feel like you're hurting me temporarily. But in the long run, you're helping me by making me find a way to manage a budget. And also, the feeling of entitlement is the worst feeling you can have, because I know you're not entitled to anything. When I joined the football team, just because I'm from the Silliman family and joined the team doesn't entitle me to a starting position. He said, with grades, just because I walk into a class, it doesn't entitle me to get an A. I feel like today it's a major misconception that people have that are my age. They assume just because they show up, they don't have to put in the hard work. They should just be given it. I feel like nobody is giving me everything, but indirectly, this has given me more skills than if I had gone to college right now and you paid for everything. I wouldn't know how to survive. I would just know how to come home and ask for more money.
It kind of
That's a good perspective.
I was like, okay.
And it makes you feel less guilty about what you're doing now, knowing that even now he recognizes that he's good, that it's good for him, even though he may be complaining.
It's interesting. You heard both of them that say it hurts. I don't like it. It feels unfair sometimes, but at the same time, they see the reason for it. Like, we're not being mean. We're actually trying to teach them how to live.
Right.
So that was neat to see that.
Yeah. When I was thinking about ways to set my kids up to struggle, I was thinking about a way that my daughter had to struggle. And it is not going to sound like a real struggle to some people, but it was a real struggle in our home. So when she was 16, we wanted to get a car, a good used car. And we had a lead on one from a family at church, but they weren't quite ready to get rid of it. So it was maybe, I guess it was the spring, and maybe they were going to be getting rid of it in the summer. So we had an extra minivan, older minivan, and I said to Abigail, well, you can drive that to school. Now, in my day, when I was growing up, anything with four wheels that ran would have been considered a huge gift. Like, I would have never even had my own car till I was almost graduated from college. If someone had given me any car before that, I would have been perfectly content. So in my mind, I felt like the fact that she was balking at driving this minivan was a clear sign that I had messed up and that she was clearly entitled and spoiled. Well, one day, and she complained about this, it was a huge source of contention in our house. Why didn't we just go out and buy a different used car? And we even did look, but we didn't feel like we could. We just didn't want to buy a used car from someone we didn't know when we knew there was somebody that we trusted that we could buy one from.
Right.
And so one day I had to go over to the high school parking lot to see if her car tire was flat. And I hadn't really driven through there in a while.
Oh, my goodness.
And as I drove through, I thought, oh, this has been a real struggle, because there are kids over there driving cars way nicer than I would ever even dream of owning.
Right.
And she had been telling me how she was so embarrassed and people had made, kind of fun of her, not in a mean way, but kind of teasing her. And I just hadn't taken it very seriously. And I think I went home from having to check that tire and said to Steve, this is a real issue. Like, she is struggling with this. And it kind of gave me a different perspective. Again, that wouldn't be struggling in some circumstances, but for her, it was a genuine struggle. She ended up with a little small car. She wasn't asking for anything big. She didn't care how beaterish it was. It just, please, Mom, cannot be a minivan.
A minivan. That's character building, Abigail. And that's why she's such a responsible young lady now.
And even when I sent her some questions, about the entitlement, that is the first thing she sent back. My car. That was her struggle.
Abigail, I still struggle with driving a minivan at my age. Which kind of leads me to this, and I don't know if this also came up in our conversation, was the difference between the way you have your older kids struggle versus the way your younger kids end up struggling. And my son's girlfriend responded to the question, and she said, I had to work or pay for anything that was considered wants. If it wasn't a necessity, then I had to, provide it for myself. I had to earn some money or whatever. She goes, but I see that my younger brother doesn't have to do that. And I know that Abigail and Davis think that about the kids that are still at home. And so do Abby and Grant.
Yes. Touchy subject.
And Davis's girlfriend
Let's move on.
Davis's girlfriend did say that she feels like she is better prepared for adulthood than maybe her younger siblings will be, but she does notice the discrepancy. So to make her feel better, I did say, when you have all the kids at home, they're all drawing from this common bank account. And you have so many more people you're having to meet the needs of. But as kids leave, there's more left over. And I just don't know that you can always make it completely even. Have your kids kind of brought this issue up?
Yeah. And when you have all of them at home and you're contemplating doing something for the first one, you think, but can I do this for the others when it comes time? You're always thinking equal and fair. Right. And now that you don't have to think about that, it's just easier to, do. Mm-hmm. Like we've taken a lot more trips with just our son, and so I'm sure that there's some jealousy there.
Yes.
Or they think he's babied or pampered, but
right.
So what?
It's just
Mindy's a baby.
That's right.
Bryce and I have actually told Abby and Grant, we've made this kind of into a funny thing in our house because we're like, yeah, you're right. Like, and even not so much with monetary gifts, but with,
privileges.
With olive privileges, like Jacob and Nathan have just gotten them earlier. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we've just told Abby and Grant that, you know what, when you guys are gone, we're going to finally be able to go on those vacations we've been wanting to, because we'll only have 4 people to pay for instead of 6.
Same way with eating out. It's so much fun to go out and eat because you can go nicer when you're only paying for 3.
Oh, and we're like, yeah, Nathan will probably have a brand new Ford truck. He's not going to have to pay for that, but you guys need to go get a job and pay for it. Yeah, vacations, cars. No, we joke about it, but yeah, I mean, there's just, you change as a parent. You're older, you've made your kids, your first 2 struggle. And I want to do that for the other 2, but it is easier. You're not thinking, do we have enough for all 4? If we can provide it, well then, where's our line drawn? Because like Julie said, well, you can provide it, but maybe you always shouldn't provide it. So.
Right.
Yeah. I know when I was asking my daughter about this, and she actually didn't bring this up, but I remembered it, about, I think she was in college, maybe her sophomore year. He just liked to drop some money in her bank account, like to make sure she had enough, and,
right.
And she actually said, Dad, stop. Because she had a job and she goes, I want to know that I can make it on my own, which is funny because she wasn't paying her tuition or her housing or car insurance, but I want to know that I can make it on her own, meeting her, I guess,
Starbucks bill.
And her wants and her, I think it was her gas and food and entertainment, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I thought that was funny that here we were trying to do something that she was asking us not to do.
Now she would probably love it if you dropped some money in her bank account.
Oh, I know.
But my kids did say that at the time, if they were denied something, it was hard. But now they see it was the right thing to do. That just because you can give it to them doesn't mean that they needed it.
Right.
We did give allowances, but with that, we expected some of their expenses to come out of them. Like I felt like allowance was a way to get money into their hands so you could teach them how to use it.
Right.
Because you can't really teach a budget if they don't have anything to work with. And
that's right.
So we did allowance, and we kind of started early with the give, save, spend, encourage that when they were little and through, middle school, high school. And I remember one time we had an issue with one kid, I won't say who it was, maybe mismanaging that money for gas.
Right.
And would typically run out before it was time to give more. So our solution was to give them a gas card, like a refillable gas gift card, because, I didn't think the right solution was, well, they just can't drive anywhere, because I needed them to drive. I needed them to drive to school. It was either going to be their gas tank or mine.
Oh, you're going to have to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a way to kind of get through that and help them better budget. Because then that money could only be spent on gas. And, so that was kind of like they couldn't just spend it on whatever. It was, this is your gas money. And then whatever else could be spent, elsewhere.
Yeah. Something that a lot of people have asked us, and again, it's one of those things where it's really personal maybe to families and their family situation, but they've said, like, how do you decide what you have your kids pay for and what you pay for? And I don't know, do you guys feel comfortable sharing how you come up with any of those decisions?
We just had to talk about it because John and I were raised very differently. I was an only child, so I did have a lot given to me because my parents just didn't have to think about that whole. I was like the last child who got things because they weren't having to divide it up and worry about fairness. Whereas John had a job from the time he was 13, and paid for everything. I mean, loans for college, total loans for college and med school, So we didn't always agree on that, on how we were going to do things. As the kids got older, I know that I tended to want to be more strict and give them less, and he wanted to give them more. It was almost like we flip-flopped from how we were raised. So we had to compromise on those things, but just talk about it. And
yeah. Have you had any way to do that, Mindy?
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about this because we were married so young. I was only 18 coming into our marriage and had never managed money. And he was just a very independent child and has loved budgeting from day one. It's just something that's a hobby for him. He is really good at it. I'm so thankful for that because even from early on in our marriage, tithing was important and just, living within our means. And so now with children, I love the conversations that we have about it because he really is pushing them to be financially independent, constantly pushing for that. At the same time, it's not without his help. And so there's a lot of conversations. So I think every family is absolutely different on this, though. It depends on you and your husband and what your goals are. It depends on how much money you have to give, and it depends on the child and how they're receiving it and doing in life. So like with Abby Ray, we didn't just buy her a car. We had a car. We have a family car that she used at home. When she went to college, she didn't take it with her because Grant was now driving and that was the family car and it stayed at home. So she went her first semester. She found a job. And then we asked her, to let us know when it was time for a car, to let us know. And we would go look for one. Bryce has given her a budget and they've talked through this a lot. Basically, we ended up buying a car together with her, knowing that she would pay half of it every month. When it's paid off, it's actually her car, but we will have helped her buy it, essentially. So she actually put money down to get her payment. She said, this is the payment I need. So just helping her make such a large purchase at 18, helping her learn how to use money, paying for her phone. She has to pay for her insurance. And these are things that aren't necessarily, normal for all college students to have to go through. But she has to be responsible for these things. When Grant leaves the house and goes to college, I don't know how we're going to handle it. Like Abby's been a very responsible child. We can trust to get a loan with her. But at the same time, some children, I would say, I will never co-sign on a loan with you.
Right.
You just don't know those things because that can really come back and harm a relationship. It's hard to know. I think you're constantly like, you're trying to make the best decision for that child at that time in life with what you perceive. And that may change. So for now, I like that. I like the situation that we're in with her. But who knows to say, how it's going to go in the future.
Because of the way he was raised, having to pay for so much, like college and med school were totally on him through loans.
Right.
And working 2 and 3 jobs, to get through all of it. And then 10 years of paying back those loans. And,
right.
He has made a commitment to get our children through college debt free. Right. Now they've had scholarships and it's not like they could just go anywhere and not have to contribute anything through academics.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was thinking was if your child can get a job at 16, some people can't because maybe their sports schedule is too demanding, or, you may have decided as a family, they have a lot of years to work and I'm going to just, kind of allow them to wait until after they graduate. But our kids have so far. We've had 3 turn 16 and they've all gotten jobs. So I would start, with the gas. That's like a good place to start. They always have to start paying for their gas. With girls, I don't know, girls just seem to want to buy a lot more things than boys. Right. So it seemed like Abigail had to pay a lot more of her own things, but it was because she was wanting to do them. She wouldn't mind like stopping for fast food or buying a shirt here or there. Like my boys, I've more had to teach that it's okay to spend some of your money for things that you want, such as gas or food once in a while or entertainment once in a while. And that's kind of been something that has been difficult in our family. I know it won't be difficult for every boy, but sometimes I feel like I want to reward that and pay for more of their things because I'm giving maybe the girls just more discretionary things. They're not old enough to have a job yet. My twins aren't, and maybe they want to go and do things. But on the other hand, I kind of check myself and say, even if he hasn't spent a lot of money on other things, he really does need to learn to put that debit card in the gas pump and actually pay for it himself.
Right. And Marie, I wanted to point out, I remember I loved how you handled Abigail's proms.
Oh,
because she went to multiple, and you have 2 more girls coming up now that will be going through the same thing. But I love that you just gave her a budget, because instead of the perspective, I don't think it's actually healthy to tell your kids we can't afford that. Now, that might be the case sometimes, but it's not the case all the time. I really like the words, we're choosing not to buy that. Like, we have so much money and that's just not a priority. We could buy that, but we're not going to. And so that they feel ownership, and that it's not always we just can't afford it, but actually we have so much money and we're making these choices because to live the life that we're choosing to live. So with the prom thing, that can easily get out of control with a girl. If you look at getting hair, makeup, the dress, the shoes, the accessories, then it gets into other things. Are we going to rent a limo or, go out to dinner, whatever. So I loved how you did that with Abigail. She had freedom in that because then she was able to make the choices for the priorities that she had for her prom. And you felt comfortable because this is the amount that we're willing to spend, and you're both happy. Like, you're not having to say no, no, no.
Right. Yeah.
That's a good thing to establish before they're getting married, before the wedding.
Yeah.
That's so true, Julie.
That's what we did with her wedding too. It's like, this is how much we're willing to spend on a wedding. You can decide what is a priority for you, and we can put the money into different categories. But if you put way much over in this other category, you're going to have to do something to make it less over here. And it kind of takes away a lot of the arguing. Entitlement, though, it's a struggle. It's something you have to work on, I think, from the time your kids are babies all the way up. I think even parents of adult children feel this struggle sometimes. How much do I pay for? How much do I not? My kids are expecting me to do this. Maybe I don't want to do that forever. It's kind of has to be an ongoing conversation.
I want to say I'm proud of my adult son for making some choices recently to maybe lower their living standards because they wanted to do it all on their own. That's a huge thing. A lot of kids wouldn't turn down the help, but they did want to do it on their own. So I'm really proud of him for that.
Yeah, I think that's really a sign that you've done something right. If they are willing to say, we can do it on our own, and I really want to try and do it on our own.
Yeah.
Isn't that the goal, to have children that, are living within their means, and then hopefully have a contentment and a gratefulness about whatever it is or whatever that picture looks like?
Having two kids that are out now and married, it is fun to watch that when it's their money. They are so tight with it, and so budget conscious and so careful. And it's funny because one was more like that at home, but one wasn't. And I know my younger son went over to my older son's house, and they were hanging out, and they were going to order a pizza. My younger son said, well, let's just get it delivered. And Andrew said, no, it's just right down the street. I can drive down there and get it. But at our house, he could have paid for the delivery.
That's so
it's
funny.
Just funny to see how they change when it's all on them. So
yes,
there's hope. They'll own it when they have to.
Yes, and you really see a different side of them than when they lived at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
definitely.
Yeah. Saying no brings joy to your child.
Eventually.
It might take a long time.
Now, Mindy, you save those texts so that you can show those to Grant and Abby the next time they complain. But see, you said that it was helpful to you.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, guys, keep up the good work. We'll see you next week.
You too. Fight the good fight.
Friends, we're so glad you joined us today. If you enjoy Midlife Matters, we hope you'll tell a friend. Show them how to find us on their phone and hit the free subscribe button so that they never miss an episode. They can also download and listen to each episode right from our website, midlifematterspodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Midlife Matters Podcast. You can also email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you back here next Wednesday. Bye.